So now we're going to talk about authentic. You should have received the authentic. It normally comes in a bag like this, or maybe you've received it in another packaging. If you receive it in a bag like this or any packaging, it's important that you keep it in the fridge. I do recommend putting it back into a plastic bag and keeping it refrigerated. Now, if you're going to use it, we're going to make what's called an authentic chef. So if you see here, it's full of nice bubbles, really active. This is called activating the authentic. It's not necessary. You can use the authentic straight into the recipe. However, I recommend just to check to make sure that it's working fine, that you wake it up a little bit. So what we're going to do, it's like me. You wake up in the morning, you go to work, you're okay. You wake up in the morning, you have a coffee, you're way better. So basically, we're going to give authentic a coffee. We're just going to put our bowl on the scales here. We then will scale out, I believe it's 20 grams for your recipe today, because you're making a 500-gram loaf. So you scale 20 grams into the bowl, and then you need to add some water, remembering to take the water away from your final recipe. So we're going to add in here approximately 50 mils of water. The water can be around 20 degrees. Then we're just going to stir it. And once we've stirred it, just so it all comes together, you can then leave it now for about 20 minutes before using, and you'll start to see it activating and waking up and bubbling just like this one. And now we're going to go through the recipe. So the recipe asks for 400 grams of bread flour. Bread flour is typically higher in protein, between 12 to 14% here in Australia. It also asks for 100 grams of rye flour. If you're to do the whole recipe in rye flour, it's quite difficult to mix. That's why we make a blend. You're also going to require 10 grams of salt. We're going to use the authentic that we activated before. And we're also going to use some of Paratos's ready-to-use powder sourdough. This is a sourdough that's actually been drum dried. So it's a rye sourdough that's been drum dried, and that's why it has a really dark, rich, malted color. We're only going to use that around 10 grams. It's ready to use. It doesn't leaven the bread, but it's going to bring a really nice malted flavor into your bread. And now, one of the most important parts, we're also going to add the water. For the water, it's important to have a water temperature approximately around 15 degrees. Why, you ask that? Because we need a final dough temperature between 26 to 28 degrees. If the dough is too cold, it takes quite a long time to ferment. If it's too hot, it's going to be really sticky and it's going to fall apart. So it's always important not to add all of your water at once, because what will happen if you add all the water at once, your dough becomes like soup and it's very difficult to mix. It's easier to add more water in the second speed. So I suggest adding first about 300 grams of water, and then you can add anything more you like in the second mix. Now we're going to put it straight into the mixer here. I'm going to use a dough hook. It's very important that you start low. Don't start mixing on anything higher than first speed, especially for the first 4 to 5 minutes. After about 4 to 5 minutes, you'll be able to mix it and take them to second speed. I also recommend nothing higher than 4 if you're using KitchenAid. And then you do what's called a gluten test, and I'll show you that in a moment. Now you're ready to take it from the mixer. I recommend for this part, having ready some flour. Also have some water, because when you put your hands in the water, it's much easier to take from the bowl. You can also sprinkle just a little bit of flour on top of your bench. Take the dough from the mixer. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fold in the middle, 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 turn over. You should have a nice clear dome on top. I recommend putting a little bit of spray back in your bowl, and you can place the dough nicely back into your bowl. We're going to cover with some plastic inside, and then you need to rest between 30 minutes to 1 hour at ambient temperature. So the time is up, 30 minutes. Now we're going to take our bowl. You can take off the plastic gently. It might be a little bit sticky. If it is, you can just pull it off really gently and scrape the top of it off. Then what we need to do is we put some flour on the bench, like so. And you need to tip your dough onto the bench. That's what you call bulk fermentation. It's very important with sourdough to allow the time in the bulk fermentation, between 30 minutes to an hour, like I said, for authentic. Now we're going to put a little bit of flour on top of here. And you can make one big loaf like this if you like, but because it's a bit easier to manage, I suggest you cut it in half, approximately about 440 grams per loaf. Once you have it like this, we need to do what's called a pre-shape. Now, pre-shape is the shape before the final shape. So I suggest you turn it upside down, fold in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, go all the way around, turn it over, and then just with your hands. Now, if you have too much flour, it's going to be really difficult to make round. So just round it with your hands. You should make sure the bottom parts of your hands are on the table, like so. You should have a nice pre-shape. Same again here. In the middle, in the middle, in the middle, into the middle, into the middle, from the outside into the middle, turn it over, and once again, with your two hands, just passing it like a ball one to the other, we're going to make it round. So now we're going to leave this here. We have to cover it again, and we're going to leave it for a further 10 minutes to rest. So now you've left it for the 10 minutes to rest. It's here we start to do the final shape. So for the final shape, once again, a little bit of flour, not too much because you want to be able to grip the bottom of the table. What I suggest is you can do two different shapes. The first one, of course, is a round shape. And what you need to do for that round shape is take your bowl, put your hands with a little bit of flour on your hands, like so, not too much. And once again, you're just going to follow the same like before. We're going to make it round. We always want to make sure we keep the same point on the top, like a little bit of an indent. Just make sure that always remains on the top. Make it round. You need to get quite a bit of power in there. Once you've done it, you can pick it up and put it onto your tray like so with the baking paper. For the second one, we'll make a bit of a different shape for you. We're first going to turn it upside down. So upside down, give it a little pat. Then you need to fold from the top just down slightly. The ends just in slightly, down a little bit further. And then when you reach the end, use the back of your hand just here. We're going to close the seam on the bottom. You should be able to see like this. Once you've finished, you can just roll it a little bit back and forward, like so, and place it onto the tray. Sure, you can search YouTube if you want to search any other shaping techniques, but I recommend trying those two for your back session today. And now we're going to put it into the prover. We need to prove for around 45 minutes at 30 degrees, about 80% humidity inside the prover. If you're proving on the bench, you need to probably allow about 1 hour to 1 hour and 20 minutes. Let's put it in. Now we're up to the fun part. Are you ready for it? Take your bread out of the prover. You'll be able to tell it's ready when you put your finger, a little bit of flour, and tap on it, and it should leave a little indent, and you shouldn't feel the power inside the bread. From here, you can use a blade. You can use a sharp knife or a razor blade. I have today a stencil you can place on top like so. I like to dust with a rye flour because I find a rye flour brings a nicer color on top. And we just lightly dust on top like so. Remove the stencil. And if you don't have a stencil, that's no problem, of course. You can get creative with some grids or some anything you can find in the kitchen. Now this one you could just lightly tap on top. You don't want to put too much flour on there. Now in order to cut, you're not cutting down the bread, you're opening the bread. So for this one you can do two types of cuts. You could cut straight through the middle, or you could do two cuts like so. I'm going to go at an angle and then an angle, and then you can even just go a little bit underneath, which is going to help the bread open up. For your round one, I suggest just cutting one time through the middle. Make sure it's deep enough so it will cut open. And if you're not sure, you can always go just one more time through. Now we're going to bake in the oven. We're going to bake it around 220 degrees for about 30 minutes with steam. You can bake it on the tray, or you can bake it on the sole of the oven if you haven't a good deck oven. So there you have it. That's how you make bread using the authentic and of course the Sapore Aperta, our ready to use sourdough. I really hope you've enjoyed today, and good luck with your lesson. Ciao.